difficult to talk about Guerrilla Games without mentioning the Killzone series as, aside from the dire shell-shock NAM 67, those are the only games that they'd previously made. Over the course of 5 installments released on everything from the PS2 to the PS4, the series never did manage to live up to its objective of being Sony's Halo beta. While none of them are particularly bad, in fact, some of them are reasonably enjoyable. It's telling that by far the best entry in the series was Killzone Mercenary for the PlayStation Vita, which was by the completely separate development house Guerrilla Cambridge, who Sony scandalously chose to shut down a few months ago. Considering Horizon Zero Dawn is Guerrilla's first original IP in over a decade, it couldn't really be more different to the first-person shooters to which they're accustomed. That's really where the originality in this story ends though, as virtually every single aspect of this game seems to have been lifted from another source. The post-apocalyptic open world in which you play feels like it's been designed by Ubisoft, right down to containing towers which unlock parts of the map, albeit the kinds of towers that have long necks, skill trees that unlock abilities to make the story missions easier, ultralight RPG-style experience points, and collectible materials for crafting and selling like in Far Cry Primal. You name it, it's all here. And indeed, like most original Ubisoft games, we can't help but feel that this is another interesting but flawed opener to a series that will truly come alive in the sequel. Much has been made of the fact that Guerrilla has based the protagonist here, Aloy, on the character Ygritte from Game of Thrones. While she is indeed female, ginger, and can use a bow and arrow, there the similarities end. Ygritte wasn't in Game of Thrones for a huge amount of time, but made a lasting impression thanks to the excellent writing, which displayed her complex and conflicted character being compellingly pulled between two factions. None of this is true for Aloy, who feels like an empty vessel designed purely to carry around her impressive arsenal of in-game tools and weaponry, and, to be perfectly honest, only ever reminded us of EastEnders' Bianca Jackson. But ignoring the disappointing writing will actually help to focus upon the mechanics of the game itself, which have been far more skillfully executed. You see, the world that Bianca inhabits is one that's seen modern civilization reduced back to a quasi-Stone Age with a technological twist, where the lush, tropical vegetation is stalked by giant killer robot beasts and dinosaurs. A perfectly serviceable stealth system allows you to skulk around in long grass so that you can assault these creatures and bring them down using any combination you choose of traps, a bow and arrow, hacking tools, an explosive slingshot, tripwires, mines, and a particularly handy rope tether. This latter tool gives you the ability to, for example, trap a smaller creature so that you can hack it and ride it around the map, or you can destroy them to harvest various components so that you can craft new items or sell them on. If the wide array of tools and weapons sounds complicated, don't worry, as the combat itself is surprisingly straightforward, which is to the game's credit. Like the very best Ubisoft open world games, Horizon Zero Dawn is a game that rewards staying away from the story in its early hours, so that you can run around unlocking the map, grinding for kills and materials, and building up your experience and skill tree. However, like the not so great Ubisoft open world map games, once you get back to the story missions, the game loses much of its luster. But more worryingly still, even running around the open world gets tired and becomes repetitive sooner than we'd have liked, as the side missions littering the map all follow one of a very limited number of variations, and are weakly justified by the characters who dish them out. As a point of reference, while it definitely held our attention for longer than the open world grindfest Mad Max, it had nowhere near the longevity of Metal Gear Solid 5. In terms of its graphical design, the game is absolutely stunning. Although we played on a base PS4, which is noticeably less pleasing to the eye than the heavily advertised PS4 Pro version, Horizon is nevertheless one of the most aesthetically pleasing open worlds in which we've played. The colour palette is bursting with the kind of tropical colours that make you lament living in the Northern Hemisphere in February, and, along with much of its soundtrack, reminded us of the horrifically underrated Enslaved Odyssey to the West, which also featured a lush, green, post-apocalyptic world inhabited by robot AIs. While that game didn't feature an open world, it did contain excellent writing from Alex Garland and a top-notch motion capture performance from Andy Serkis. And that, generally speaking, is what's missing from Horizon Zero Dawn. Guerrilla have undoubtedly focused a lot on putting together the fairly impressive open world and filling it with engaging things to do, at least in the short term. But, by neglecting the writing, the world building on display suffers. This is a particularly serious problem considering that the strongest part of the game, running around taking down Dinobots, doesn't hold the attention for as long as it needs to, in what is not a short game, but not a particularly long one either in terms of the genre. Just to be absolutely clear, Horizon Zero Dawn is not a bad game. It's just that it feels like a whole load of other open world games that, in the grand scheme of things, are better. When you consider the lack of a decent story, Aloy's not especially likeable personality, if indeed you can call it that, and the relatively simplistic stealth and combat that gets dull long before the game's credits roll, then the only reason you'd have to choose this over any one of a number of better games would be the fact that it looks quite nice on the PS4 Pro. Is that enough of a reason to buy this for full price? Well, that's up to you, but we're awarding Horizon Zero Dawn a score of 77%, along with a recommendation that you wait for a while and pick it up cheaply, or maybe even hang around for what we strongly suspect will be a much stronger sequel.